how do I know what my true self is versus what might be a limiting belief I have about myself? Like, how do I know which one's which?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple of tests you can perform on yourself essentially. The simplest one is to just wait a day. If you think you have an idea, a direction, an insight, and you want to start doing it, and you think this is the way I should go and take my life, the mind, the monkey mind, hence the name, it jumps around. It thinks one thing is true one moment, and then soon as your energy changes, you could just go take a shower, and by the time you step back out, you may have other things. Oh, maybe it's that thing or another thing, and so the that's a sign of just kind of an idea that's in the head, and there's no real substance to it, and those are typically outside voices that we're conditioned and imprinted with. Now, your inner voice really, there's two indications to it. It doesn't waver. It keeps nagging you. You should be doing this. You should be looking into that and try that. Take a class, whatever it may be. It keeps coming back over time. It's a subtle voice. Typically, the noise in the head is so dominant that we only get these small intuitive hits, but we can amplify that with a mindfulness practice and get more in tune with that. But more importantly, your true self, your calling, is usually unpleasant. And I say that with grace, because when you're called to do something, as the word implies, calling means you're not quite there yet. It's asking you to grow. It's asking you to expand into a place from your current set of limitations. So that's always a little uncomfortable. And that is actually a true sign that you're feeling called to be something and do something, make a decision, is that it doesn't quite feel so comfortable.
So would you say that you said the monkey brain kind of and the true self being the one that is repetitive, would you say that occasionally people get a little bit hijacked by, let's say, an emotion or whatever it is, but who they are, their true self will always come back to them eventually, or perhaps repetitively, as you said?
Yeah, well, it's not just occasionally that the mind jumps in and hijacks our attention. It's every couple seconds. If there's a lot of exercises I do with my clients, and it reveals very quickly how fickle this mind really is that we're working with. And at first, it's kind of a shocking revelation, because this is the mind that we've been like using to navigate life and make life affirming decisions with, we can't even stay focused on something as simple as our breath for more than a few seconds without it coming in and pulling our attention away. So that's a big awakening right there. But it's just it's an awareness muscle, right? We're so used to reacting to things, to our thoughts, reacting to our feelings as well, and this reactivity, it keeps us stuck, essentially, keeps the energy behind those thoughts and those feelings stuck inside of us. And so the unpleasant stuff we push away, the pleasant things we cling to, we want more of. And so we're in this constant state of hiccup to the flow of life entering and exiting our experience. We're not the containers for the observing presence for our thoughts to arise and pass, or our feelings to come and go, but rather we keep attaching ourselves to to our thoughts and feelings. And that's a small experience of life. It's very limited, and it's kind of full of anguish and anxiety. It's like a small space.
So, I mean, I am totally on the same page in terms of shall we say, the example that's not so good, meaning that internal voice that keeps taking you away from things, and instead of being able to focus on what you would like to focus on, like a purposeful thought. But what is an example of what it might look like when you're actually doing it right, the right way?
Mm. So this is really one of the most mysterious things about the way life works, is that by wanting things, we're reinforcing not having them. And so when we want to be still, if we want to quiet our mind, it reinforces the noise. And to calm our mind, and this is where we started out from, it's actually accepting it as it is, to see the noise and to be okay with it. And that calms it down. So there's this inverse relationship I talk about, in Zen Buddhism. There's all these master student parables where the student is asks the master, where can I find more presence? How do I become more present? And the master says, well, listen for the stream in the distance. And the student listens for it and says, I can't hear anything. And the master says, exactly. So there's lots of things like that. Alan Watts talked about the inverse law or the backwards law. I've had many conversations on my podcast with neuroscientists as well, and how the brain evolved in a time evolutionarily when there was a lot of survivalism and problems to solve, immediate problems that we needed to solve for our survival. And for most of us, fortunately today, we don't have those immediate problems anymore, but the brain wants to keep creating problems because that's what it's designed to do, is solve problems. So it just creates this noise, these fake problems, if you will, today. And so it's really coming out of the mind altogether, returning into the presence of our body, so we can become more like the tree that when stormy winds come, you accept it, you bend to them, you know deep down that the turbulent times strengthen you at some level, your roots, your trunk, and your branches, and that the sun will shine again, and then it's time to open up and blossom. And so learning to flow with the seasons of life, that's really what it is. Mindfulness is all about, and what presence is. And that brings us, takes us out of this constant resistance to things that are happening differently than we want them to.